In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Dark Night of the Soul and try to explain to you what it actually is. And don't worry, it actually is a good thing. May not feel like it yet, but I promise you it is. I'm also going to give you guys some things to remember as you try to navigate this terrifying, yet probably don't see it yet, exciting time in your life. Welcome back, or if this is your first time joining me, I'm John Wetz, and this is Spirituality U. On this channel, I talk about spirituality, personal growth, mental health, law of attraction, and several other things that kind of fit in the same genre as those, but are kind of like offshoots. If this is your thing and you kind of jive with my vibe, I'd love it if you give me a like and subscribe. It'd help me a lot. Anyway, let's dive in. So I went through a fairly long Dark Night of the Soul that lasted about 3 years, back in 2016, that lasted until about 2019. In the middle of this is when I started to kind of go through my spiritual awakening at the same time. It was honestly kind of hard, very, very painful at the time. A lot of experiences that I would not have willingly chosen at the time, and honestly, still wish some could have ended up differently, but if given the chance to go back and change it, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't want to risk changing where I ended up and how my life has turned out. Because even though it may not feel like it now, there's a lot of beautiful coming your way if you're going through a Dark Night of the Soul. So don't get too discouraged. I'm just going to start off by saying that Dark Night of the Souls suck. They aren't fun. They're really difficult. But there is beautiful coming your way that you cannot even see yet, and I promise you that. It may not seem like it, and even if you don't believe it, I will believe it for you right now, because I know I know how this goes. I've been through it myself. There are countless of others that have shared their experiences on YouTube and blog posts and whatnot, talking very similarly about almost the same kind of experience. Where they go through these unbelievable painful experiences that just change their life. But they come out of it with something so much more beautiful than they went into it with, that makes all that pain worth it. So what actually is the Dark Night of the Soul? The Dark Night of the Soul is a very emotionally painful, life-altering experience that basically feels like everything in your life is just collectively shitting on you at either the exact same time or back to back to back to back, one right after the other. It doesn't give up, and it breaks you to your core. Anything and everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong when you're in the middle of a Dark Night of the Soul. From meaningless little shit that really doesn't do anything but just push your buttons a little harder, to things that change your life forever. Things like deaths of loved ones, breakups, job loss, friends just kind of fading out of your life, or at least severely diminishing their presence in your life. Living situation will change. It's just every angle that stress can possibly come at you from, it comes from. And oftentimes it forces you into the hardest period of your life. And you end up going through it either actually alone or what feels like alone. And you basically just have the bare minimum of what you need to get yourself through it. And you question a lot if you're going to get through it. It often feels like you're going to die, literally, either by stress or by your own doing when you're going through a Dark Night of the Soul, because it has a way of just breaking you and sending you to the lowest low you have ever had in your life. Like, it pushes you down to a really dark place where you don't see how it's ever going to get better. There will normally be this little glimmer of hope, though, that you can and should hold on to pull yourself out of it. Because this really is only temporary. It is not what the rest of your life is going to look like. It is just one hell of a nasty storm that has come in to change your world for the better. And I know it's hard to believe that right now, but this is just one giant ass reset button that your soul is pushing for your life to bring you things that you don't even know you want yet. Like I said, there are myself and countless others that have gone through this, that are like, hey, this is really hard. We've done it. We see it. We feel for you. But trust when we say that there is a lot of beauty on the other side of this. Beauty that you cannot even dream of yet, because you were so in the middle of it. You're just kind of grasping to survive right now. But don't let that beat you. Just hold on and go through it the best you can. I wish I could tell you this will pass quickly, but unfortunately there is really not a set duration on how long a Dark Night of the Soul lasts for. I've heard of people experience it in like as short as like a few months, and as long as like 5-10 years. It really depends on the person, the circumstances, how quickly you learn the lessons that are in it that are needed to learn, how quickly you decide that you want to pull yourself out of it. The general path of a Dark Night of the Soul kind of looks, think of like a big hill. Like you start at the top and you just take this massive plunge to the very bottom that you can ever go to, like the deepest deep that you can think of. You just plunge from the top all the way down, and then slowly you level out and start climbing up a little bit and go back down a little. And it's just this series of hills and valleys. You climb a little bit, you fall a little bit. You normally don't fall anywhere near as far and hard as you did at the very beginning, but it's a slow climb out. Like, you're going to have a lot of challenges over it, but again, it does get easier. You can either go through this kicking and screaming, fighting it every step of the way, or you can kind of surrender to the events that are happening and try to take in the lessons that it's trying to teach you. Because there is something to learn through the Dark Night of the Soul. It's not pointless. It's not just coming in to just wreak havoc on you for no reason. It's coming to teach you things, and it's coming to clear the path for a much, much happier future for you. When this is all over for you, you are going to come out of this so much stronger, so much happier, with a fresh look at life that you probably do not even think you're going to be able to have right now. Pretty much everyone that I've listened to comes out of this just with so much more happiness and a love for life that was not there before this. It's hard to think of it this way, but honestly, everything that is lost to go through this experience, to become that new you, it does end up feeling kind of worth it. That might be hard to accept because we do lose quite a lot when we go through a Dark Night of the Soul. And I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt, that it's not important, and that we don't wish we had back some of what we lost, because we do. But you have to understand, it's just part of your journey. It is just part of the journey of your life. And you can either accept it, or you can let it just hold you back for the rest of your life. So now that you know what the Dark Night of the Soul is, what it feels like, and what to expect on the other side of it, let's get into what we can do to kind of make going through it a little easier on you, even just a little bit. The first thing is to trust your intuition, or learn to trust it. That is part of the intention of the Dark Night of the Soul, is to learn to trust your intuition, trust yourself. Listen to that voice that is deep inside of you. It's trying to navigate this shitstorm that you found yourself in. Listen to what it is telling you to do or not do. But understand that there are going to be lessons involved with this as well. Because the voice of intuition sounds very similar to the voice of desire and the voice of anxiety. And until you learn the very subtle differences of the three, they all kind of blend together. And honestly, even after you do learn the differences, it's easy to kind of fall back in and lose that inner touch with yourself that you found that lets you distinguish them. So don't get too discouraged. Understand that it's all part of the lesson of following the wrong one sometimes. You just got to do it so you can kind of learn from it. So don't get too discouraged with that, but don't be afraid to follow it either. The second thing is, don't ignore signs. If you're noticing number patterns, or if information keeps coming from you from different sources, whether it's YouTube videos, blog posts, or whatever, about specific topics, it's probably your spirit guides trying to help you get through something. That information that's there is probably meant for you. Don't hesitate to at least humor it and look up what, the numbers you're seeing mean, or if you're feeling drawn to a certain topic. Don't be afraid to explore and kind of research it a little bit, or more so when things seem to find you. Trust that they are meant to find you. That's kind of how it happened with me. Most of the information I needed to get through mine, I just stumbled upon accidentally. And when I say accidentally, I don't mean accidentally. I'm pretty sure it was more like divinely guided to my path at the right time. Because honestly, I had like everything I needed. Not much more than I needed, but I had everything that I needed at the exact right time for what I was going through at any given point through that period of my life. The third thing is shadow work is essential. Shadow work is the idea of looking at all the parts of you that you don't like. Oftentimes the parts that are kind of coming up during a dark night of the soul. All these negative patterns that are coming up. Don't just try to close those wounds again and bury the emotion back in there. Look at what's coming up. Try to identify the root of what's happening. Break down the emotions that you're feeling until you can't break them down any further. I'm going to show you kind of an example of this. Back when I was getting ready to move to Orlando, I kept worrying so much about having things go wrong. Like, what happens if I move and the people I care about, either we drift apart or they pass away, and I've wasted this time by not spending it with them. I was worried about feeling guilty, feeling alone, and feeling kind of unloved. Breaking those feelings down. All three of those lead to a feeling of sadness. Sadness at its root is just being unhappy. Ultimately, my fear of moving out to Orlando and leaving what I was wanting behind, or leaving what I had behind, was just a fear of being unhappy. But I was already unhappy where I was. So I was just afraid of being unhappy again. But the thing is, where I was, I knew what that was leading to. It's not that I was like horribly unhappy, but I didn't feel alive there. So, I was searching for this happiness out there, but I was talking myself out of it because I was constantly worrying about ending up more unhappy instead of worrying or being excited about what could go right and ending up happier than I was then. So that's kind of what I mean by breaking down your emotions. Try to break it down to the rawest form of what it actually is. Get to the base of it and figure out what you're afraid of, and then approach it. This is kind of how you approach all those negative things that are coming up. Get to the root of them, and you can understand them more. When you identify what that emotion is, try to think of something positive you can do, like a positive emotion, to counter that negative emotion. And then try to figure out something you can do in that moment to make yourself feel that positive emotion. Get used to being the source of your own happiness. Get used to doing something for you that pulls you out of whatever, dark place you're in. Stop waiting for other people to do that and decide to be the source of your own happiness. One other part to the shadow work is learning to reframe the stories of what happened to you. Like, decide a different truth to why it happened. Don't look at it as happening to you, look at it as happening for you. Try to figure out what those scenarios were trying to do for you. Whether something was breaking down in a very destructive, very chaotic, hurtful way, look at how it got you out of a situation that wasn't working for you anymore. Maybe you were telling yourself that you wanted something and you were settling when you shouldn't have been settling. You should have been moving on. The fourth thing is raising your vibration. Everything you consume with your mouth, your ears, your eyes, and just your emotions in general influence your vibration. So pay attention to the things you're eating. Pay attention to the things that you're watching on TV, the music you listen to. These things aren't inherently bad, but if everything that you're putting into your body through any means possible is talking about, scary things, unpleasant things, fear-based things, it might be time to start taking steps towards things that are going to affect you more positively instead of more negatively. Maybe you're feeling called to try a healthier diet, or maybe you feel called to listen to a new type of music. Listen to it. If you feel called to ignore a certain type of content, a lot of people, when they go through this, start feeling called to ignore the news. Don't be afraid to do that. The fifth and final thing is don't be afraid to let go. Whether it's of your hobbies or different, habits you have, or even people in your life. Don't be afraid to change the priority level of these things in your life. And that goes for anyone. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a real close relative. If they're impacting your health and your happiness, you are allowed to choose your happiness first. You are allowed to make the changes you need to make yourself happier, regardless of who it is. I struggled with this for such a long time. I felt obligated to just keep people in my life that were honestly not really doing me any good at the time. It didn't mean that I had to keep them out forever. It just meant that maybe I needed distance or boundaries. You are allowed to have your boundaries. And it is possible for you to have your boundaries and still be the same loving you that you are. But know your limits. And anyone who loves you is not going to think less of you or love you less for taking care of yourself also. You don't owe anyone an explanation or an apology for it at the time. If you feel called to give an explanation, that's fine. But you are not required to do that. All you have to do is do what is best for you. You are allowed to do that. And it may not be a person that you need to let go of. It may just be a habit or a hobby that is kind of holding you back from your next potential. It might be something that really served a purpose for you at one point in your life. But at this point, you've gotten all you can from it. And it's okay to revisit it to enjoy it sometimes, but maybe it needs to take a backseat in your life or play a different role than it did for however long it's played a role in your life for now. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from a movie, from Lord of the Rings, actually, from Samwise. Sam says, "It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to how it was, when so much bad happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, the shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you. They meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something." And Frodo says, "What are we holding on to, Sam?" And Sam says that there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. I think that's really appropriate for anyone going through a dark night of the soul, because it kind of perfectly sums up what you're going through, especially the first part of it, and why you should hold on, because there is good and beauty coming your way, like I said multiple times in this. And believe me, it is worth fighting for. Anyway, I love y'all, and I hope you got something from this video. If you did, I'd love it if you leave me a like and subscribe. It'd help me out a lot, but no worries if not. Until next time, enjoy the music, and I'll see you soon.